Have you ever sent a text and then immediately felt that knot in your stomach, your mind spinning in loops as you overanalyze every single word, every punctuation mark, wondering what they really meant by that period instead of an exclamation point? Or maybe you've spent hours after a first date replaying every conversation, every joke that maybe didn't land, every silent moment that felt like an eternity, mentally writing and rewriting the entire evening until you're exhausted by a story that only exists inside your own head. If this sounds painfully familiar, you are not alone. This constant mental chatter, this cycle of overthinking, has become the hidden tax on modern dating, draining the joy and spontaneity from what should be an exciting journey of connection and turning it into a source of relentless anxiety. But what if you could find a way to step out of that mental whirlwind? What if there was a time-tested method to quiet the noise, to reclaim your confidence, and to approach dating not from a place of fear, but from a foundation of unshakable inner peace? This is not a new problem. In fact, an ancient philosophy born in the turmoil of Roman and Greek life offers a surprisingly modern and profoundly practical solution. This is Stoicism. Far from the common misconception of being unfeeling or cold, Stoicism is a philosophy of resilience, of focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we cannot. It is a mental framework built for navigating life's uncertainties with grace and strength. And when applied to the unpredictable world of dating, its principles become powerful tools to dismantle overthinking at its very core. The Stoics understood that our suffering comes not from the events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. In dating, this means the agony isn't in the unanswered text, it's in the story we tell ourselves about why it's unanswered. The anxiety isn't in the possibility of rejection, it's in our catastrophic interpretation of what that rejection would mean. This video is your guide to applying that ancient wisdom to your modern love life. We are about to embark on a journey through 25 specific Stoic secrets, each one a deliberate step away from the tyranny of overthinking and toward a state of empowered calm. We will explore how to reframe your fears, how to act with intention instead of reacting from insecurity, and how to build a core sense of self-worth that remains solid regardless of dating outcomes. This is a transformation from seeing dating as a source of stress to embracing it as a practice in personal growth and peaceful connection. So, if you're ready to trade that mental noise for quiet confidence, to replace anxiety with action, and to discover how the wisdom of thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca can revolutionize your approach to relationships, then you are in the right place. Let's begin. And so we arrive at our very first and perhaps most foundational Stoic secret, the one that serves as the bedrock for all the others. This is the principle known as the dichotomy of control. The ancient Stoics, like Epictetus, drew a simple but life-altering line in the sand. They said that some things are within our complete control and other things are not. Within our control are our own opinions, our impulses, our desires, and our aversions. In essence, everything that is truly our own doing, our judgments, our values, and our voluntary actions. What is not within our control? Pretty much everything else. Our bodies, our reputations, our possessions, and most critically, the actions and opinions of other people. Now let's bring this profound clarity into the often murky world of dating. Where does overthinking almost always take root? It's right here in the blurring of this line. We lie awake at night, desperately trying to control the uncontrollable. We try to control whether someone finds us attractive enough, whether they interpret our text message in the exact way we intended, whether they will call us back, whether they see us as the one. We exhaust ourselves mentally trying to manage outcomes that were never ours to manage in the first place. The Stoic would tell us that this is the very source of our anxiety. It is a futile, self-inflicted torture to invest our mental energy in domains where we have no sovereignty. But what does this look like in practice? Let's take a very common scenario. You have a wonderful first date. The conversation flows, you share laughs, and you feel a genuine connection. You control sending a thoughtful follow-up text the next day, expressing that you had a nice time. That action, that gesture of interest and maturity, is 100% within your circle of control. You have done your part with integrity. What is now firmly outside your circle of control? Their response or their lack of one. You cannot control how busy their week became, whether they felt the same spark, or if they are simply poor at texting. The overthinking mind will immediately leap into that external territory, crafting elaborate stories. Was my message too eager? Maybe I should have waited longer to text. Did I say something wrong at the end of the date? This mental churn is you trying to control a kingdom that does not belong to you. Another powerful example is the act of asking someone out. You control gathering the courage, choosing your words kindly, and extending the invitation. That is a complete action in itself, an act of vulnerability and confidence that you can be proud of regardless of the result. The outcome, their yes or no, is not yours to command. When you truly internalize this, the fear of rejection transforms. It loses its power because your self-worth was never on the line in their answer. It was demonstrated in your courage to ask. Your value is housed in your actions, not in their reactions. So, here is your immediate, practical exercise to start applying this secret today. Before any date or any significant interaction, take just 60 seconds to mentally list what is within your control. You control your hygiene, what you wear, your punctuality, your intention to be present and listen actively, the authenticity of your stories, and your kindness. After the date, do the same. You control sending a courteous thank you, and you control your honest reflection on whether you enjoyed their company. You do not control their impression of you, their dating history, their emotional availability, or their decision to see you again. By consciously drawing this line, you are not being passive. You are being powerfully active where it truly counts. You are redirecting your energy from the chaotic external world, which will never obey you, to your own inner world where you are the absolute ruler. This single mental shift can cut the cord of overthinking before it ever has a chance to entangle you. Building on the powerful foundation of focusing only on what you can control, we now move to a second Stoic technique that might seem counterintuitive at first, but is incredibly effective at disarming anxiety. This is the practice of negative visualization, or what the Romans called premeditatio malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. Now, before you dismiss this as just inviting pessimism, understand that the Stoic purpose is the exact opposite. This is not about expecting the worst to happen. It is about building a psychological immune system so strong that potential setbacks no longer have the power to throw you into a spiral of overthinking. Think of it like a fire drill. We conduct fire drills not because we believe the building is constantly on the verge of burning down, but because we want to be prepared, calm, and know exactly what to do just in case an emergency ever occurs. That preparation doesn't make us live in fear of fire. It actually makes us feel safer and more competent. Negative visualization works in precisely the same way for your emotional world. By mentally rehearsing potential challenges, you are inoculating yourself against the shock and disappointment if they do occur, and more importantly, you are draining the what-if scenarios of their terrifying power. So, how do we apply this ancient fire drill to the modern dating scene? Let's take a very common source of anxiety, the fear of an awkward date. Instead of trying to suppress that fear or hoping for the best, you deliberately sit with it for a few moments. You close your eyes and you visualize it. You picture yourself sitting across from your date. You imagine the conversation hitting a lull. You feel that silence stretching out and you notice the discomfort. But then, in your visualization, you see yourself handling it with grace. You take a sip of your drink, you smile warmly, and you ask a simple, open-ended question to gently steer the conversation back on track. You mentally rehearse your own calm response. By doing this, you've transformed the unknown monster of awkwardness into a manageable situation you already know how to navigate. Let's go a step further and tackle one of the biggest triggers for overthinking, the fear of rejection. You meet someone you genuinely like, and the prospect of not getting a second date, or even more common today, being ghosted, can feel utterly devastating. Negative visualization asks you to face that possibility head-on. You imagine sending a text and receiving no reply. You picture seeing their profile on an app again a week later. You allow yourself to feel the initial sting of disappointment, but then, and this is the crucial Stoic shift, you immediately follow that thought with a reminder of what remains true and good in your life. You think about your close friends, your personal goals, your hobbies that bring you joy, your own intrinsic worth that is completely separate from this one person's opinion. You realize that even in this worst-case scenario, your world does not end. You are still you, and your life is still full of value and potential. When you consciously accept that these outcomes are possible, you perform a kind of psychological alchemy. The anxiety that was once a loud, screaming alarm in your mind becomes a quiet, background fact. It loses its emotional charge. This doesn't make you cynical or detached, it makes you resilient. You can now walk into a date having already made peace with every possible outcome. This is incredibly freeing. It allows you to be truly present, to listen more attentively, and to express your genuine personality without the desperate need for a specific result. You can appreciate the good moments, the shared laughter, the interesting conversation for exactly what they are, pleasant experiences in the moment. And if things don't work out, you are not devastated because you had the wisdom to understand from the beginning that this was always one of the possible paths. You prepared your mind for it, and now you can handle it with strength and move forward without endless, painful rumination. Now, let's explore a third Stoic secret that takes the principles of acceptance a step further, into a profound and transformative mindset known as amor fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. This is not merely about tolerating or grudgingly accepting what happens to you. It is about actively embracing every single event, every outcome, as if you had chosen it yourself. The Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." Amor fati is about becoming that fire, using every experience, especially the difficult and unexpected ones, as fuel for your own growth and brightness. In the context of dating, this concept is nothing short of revolutionary. Overthinking is fundamentally an act of resistance. It is our mind's frantic, desperate struggle against a reality we did not want or expect. We resist the silence after a text. We resist the feeling of a date not going as planned. We resist the sting of rejection. We clench mentally, trying to wish the situation away or rewrite it, and that internal struggle is what creates the exhausting loop of anxiety. Amor fati invites you to release that resistance entirely. It teaches you to open your arms to the outcome, whatever it may be, and to find a way to love it for the role it plays in your broader journey. So what does it mean, in concrete terms, to love your fate in dating? Let's take the most common example, rejection. The standard, instinctual response is to see it as a personal failure, a verdict on your worth, a door slammed shut. Amor fati reframes that entire narrative. It asks you to see rejection not as a failure, but as a necessary redirection. Think of it as a cosmic course correction. Every no you receive is not a block to your path. It is the path itself, expertly guiding you away from a connection that was not right for you and saving you precious time, energy, and heartache. It is the universe's way of clearing the space for the yes that truly fits. When you can genuinely start to see it this way, the fear of rejection begins to dissolve. You can send that text or ask for that second date with a sense of calm curiosity, thinking, "Let's see what the universe has in store. I will be grateful for whichever answer I receive because both will guide me forward. But amor fati goes beyond just the big moments of rejection. It applies to the smaller, awkward moments as well, that uncomfortable silence in the middle of a coffee date. Instead of inwardly cringing and spiraling into thoughts about your lack of conversational skills, you can choose to love that moment. You can appreciate it for the honest, human awkwardness that it is, a shared, real experience. It becomes a piece of data telling you something about the dynamic between you and this other person. It's not a flaw in the evening, it's a feature of the story. Even a date that feels like a complete disaster can be loved for the sheer comedy of the situation, or for the powerful lesson it taught you about what you truly don't want in a partner. This shift in perspective transforms your entire dating history from a series of hits and misses into a cohesive and valuable life story. Every ghosting, every mismatched connection, every wonderful evening that didn't lead to a second one, they all become essential chapters. They are the experiences that taught you resilience, that clarified your desires, that built your character, and that ultimately honed your ability to recognize the right person when they finally appear. When you practice amor fati, you stop fighting your own story and start co-authoring it with fate itself. You move through the world of dating with a profound sense of trust, not in a specific outcome but in the process itself. This erases the need to overthink because there is no longer a wrong outcome to fear. There is only your life unfolding exactly as it should, with every single experience, especially the challenging ones, making you wiser, stronger, and more authentically you. Now that we've explored the power of embracing your fate, we arrive at a fourth Stoic secret that gets to the very heart of where overthinking begins. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus offered one of the most liberating statements ever made when he said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He took this a step further, explaining that we are not disturbed by events, but by the views and judgments we form about those events. Think about that for a moment. The event itself is neutral. It's the story we instantly tell ourselves about the event that creates the whirlwind of emotion and anxiety in our minds. This is the practice of correctly judging your impressions, and it is a master key for unlocking the chains of overthinking in dating. Let's translate this directly into a scenario that will feel intensely familiar. Your phone buzzes, you see a message from someone you've been dating, and your heart lifts. But then you notice the timestamp. They replied hours later than they usually do. The event, the raw data, is simply this: a message was received with a certain time delay. That is all, but your mind does not stop there. It immediately seizes this neutral fact and layers it with a judgment. They're losing interest, the thought whispers. I must have said something wrong last night. They're talking to someone else they like more. This cascade of catastrophic interpretations is what we call an impression. It's your mind's initial, automatic, and often highly unreliable story about what a given event means. And it is this story, not the late reply itself, that sends your stomach into knots and launches you into an evening of mental detective work, searching for clues that don't exist. The Stoic practice is to insert a crucial pause between that initial impression and your reaction to it. It's about creating a space for reason to step in and cross-examine the anxious thoughts your mind so readily provides. When you feel that familiar surge of anxiety after a dating event, a delayed text, a certain look, a change in plans, you must learn to stop and question the impression. You become the calm, objective judge of your own thoughts. The first question to ask is this thought based on a verifiable fact, or is it based on a fear? In the case of the late reply, the fact is the time delay. The fear is the story that it signifies disinterest. The two are not the same thing, and your job is to ruthlessly separate them. Next, you actively search for more objective, alternative interpretations. What are other, equally plausible explanations for this same event? Perhaps your date was simply wrapped up in a demanding work project. Maybe they needed some quiet time to themselves to recharge. It's possible they were driving and couldn't use their phone. They might have seen the message, intended to reply, and got genuinely distracted. Or, and this is a powerful one to consider, perhaps they were thoughtfully crafting a meaningful response and didn't want to rush it. When you force your mind to generate these alternative narratives, you accomplish something profound. You demonstrate to yourself that your initial fear-based impression is just one of many possible stories, and not necessarily the most likely one. You break its monopoly on your emotional state. This mental discipline transforms your entire dating experience. Instead of being a passive victim of your own runaway thoughts, you become an active investigator of reality. You move from a state of reaction to a state of response. The gap you create between the stimulus and your response is where your freedom lies. It's in that space that you can choose not to be disturbed. You can acknowledge the impression, there's the thought, that they're losing interest, without buying into it or letting it dictate your evening. You can look at it, label it as a possibility but not a certainty, and then consciously choose to release it and return to the present moment. This doesn't mean you become naive or ignore real red flags. It means you stop manufacturing crises out of ambiguities. You save your mental energy for what is real and actionable, and you stop tormenting yourself with fictional tragedies written by your own insecurities. By judging your impressions correctly, you take back control of your inner world, and a quiet, rational confidence begins to replace the noisy chaos of overthinking. Following the profound shift of correctly judging our impressions, we arrive at a fifth Stoic secret that redefines the entire purpose of dating itself. This is the principle of living according to virtue. For the Stoics, the ultimate good in life was not pleasure, wealth, or even romantic success. It was living a virtuous life. They identified 4 cardinal virtues that serve as a compass for all human action: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. When you consciously apply this compass to your dating life, something remarkable happens. Your primary goal shifts from the anxious, external target of getting a date or making them like you to the calm, internal target of acting virtuously in this moment. The crushing pressure to perform simply melts away because your success is no longer tied to an outcome you can't control, but to your own character, which you absolutely can. Let's break down how each of these 4 virtues transforms your approach to dating, starting with wisdom. In the Stoic sense, wisdom is practical insight. It's the ability to see situations clearly and make sound judgments. In dating, wisdom guides you to look beyond superficial attraction and ask the deeper, more important questions. It's the voice that encourages you to discern true compatibility. Are your values aligned? Do you share a similar vision for life? Is this person emotionally available and kind? Wisdom helps you see red flags for what they are, not as challenges to be overcome, but as valuable information. It prevents you from projecting a fantasy onto someone and instead allows you to see them and the potential of the relationship with clear-eyed realism. This stops the overthinking that comes from trying to force a connection that simply isn't there, saving you from immense future heartache. Next is courage, which the Stoics defined not as the absence of fear, but as acting rightly in the face of it. In the modern dating world, courage is the virtue that allows for authentic vulnerability. It's the strength required to send that first message, to ask someone out directly, to express your interest honestly, and to have the difficult conversations about expectations and boundaries. Crucially, it is also the courage to walk away from a situation that is not serving you, even when you are deeply attracted to the person. When your goal is to act courageously, the fear of rejection loses its sting. You can reframe the entire experience. My task here is not to avoid rejection, but to have the courage to express my genuine interest. If I do that, I have already succeeded, regardless of their answer. This single shift turns every potential moment of vulnerability from a risk into an opportunity to practice strength of character. Then we have justice, which in a dating context extends far beyond fairness. It is about treating the person in front of you with fundamental respect, kindness, and dignity. It means being fully present on a date, listening to understand rather than just to reply. It means honoring your word and being honest about your intentions, whether you're seeking something casual or a long-term commitment. Justice is the commitment to never ghost someone, to provide a kind and clear closure if things aren't working out, and to recognize the other person as a human being with their own complex feelings and life, not merely as a means to your own end of finding a partner. When you focus on acting justly, you naturally become a better, more considerate person to date. You stop strategizing and manipulating to get a certain result, and instead you simply engage with integrity. This builds a foundation of trust and respect that is far more attractive than any game you could possibly play. Finally, temperance or self-regulation is the virtue that directly assassinates obsessive behavior. This is the practice of moderation and balance. In dating, temperance is what keeps your life in healthy proportion. It's the discipline that stops you from texting someone 15 times in a row when you feel anxious. It's the ability to enjoy the excitement of a new connection without canceling your plans with friends or neglecting your work and hobbies. Temperance helps you manage the intense emotions that dating can stir up, preventing you from becoming consumed by the process. It reminds you that your date is an addition to your already fulfilling life, not the sole source of your happiness. By practicing temperance, you avoid the all-too-common pitfall of losing yourself in a new relationship, which is a primary trigger for overthinking and neediness. When you weave these four virtues together into a single guiding principle, your entire orientation toward dating transforms. You stop asking, "Do they like me?" and start asking, "Am I acting with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance in this interaction?" This reframes every date, every text, every moment of uncertainty as a chance to practice being the person you want to be. Your self-esteem becomes tied to your own virtuous actions, which are entirely within your control, rather than to the unpredictable reactions of another person. The performance anxiety that fuels so much overthinking simply has no place to take root. You are no longer an actor on a stage, desperately trying to win the approval of a single critic. You are a person of character, moving through the world with a quiet, unshakable confidence, engaging with others from a place of strength and integrity, and knowing that regardless of how any single date turns out, you have already succeeded by living up to your own highest standards. Moving directly from the steady ground of living by virtue, we encounter our sixth Stoic secret, a powerful mental exercise designed to give you instant perspective whenever the small dramas of dating start to feel overwhelmingly large. This is the practice known as the view from above. The Stoics, particularly the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, would regularly engage in this form of meditation to reconnect with the bigger picture of their lives and the universe itself. It's a deliberate act of zooming out, both in space and in time, to see your current situation from a much wider lens. When you feel yourself spiraling over a dating scenario, this technique acts as a sudden and profound reality check, shrinking those swirling anxieties down to their true, manageable size. Let's bring this abstract idea into your daily life. Think about the last time a dating-related worry completely consumed you. Perhaps you were waiting for a reply to a message that felt a bit too vulnerable, or you were analyzing a single comment from a date for hidden meanings. In that moment, the problem fills your entire mental field of vision. It feels immense, urgent, and all-important. The view from above asks you to pause that spiral and consciously pull back the camera. First, try the temporal view. Ask yourself a simple but powerful question. Will this specific worry matter in 1 week? How about in 1 month? Or, for an even more revealing perspective, 1 year from now? The honest answer is almost always a resounding no. That text message you're obsessing over, that slightly awkward goodbye, these are blips on the radar of your life's journey. A year from now, you will likely struggle to even remember the details of this particular anxiety. This isn't to minimize your feelings, but to grant them their proper proportion. Recognizing that this moment is temporary and fleeting drains it of its power to dominate your present peace. Now, let's zoom out even further to the spatial view. Imagine you could float up out of your chair through the roof of your home high above your city. You see the sprawling network of streets, the countless buildings, and the tiny, moving dots that are people, each one living a life just as complex and vivid as your own, each with their own hopes, fears, and dating anxieties. Continue rising until you see the curve of the planet, continents, and oceans sprawled beneath you. From this cosmic vantage point, your entire city is a speck of light on the surface of a small world. And within that city, your home is a single point, and within that home, the worry you are holding in your mind is a microscopic flicker of thought. This exercise isn't meant to make you feel insignificant, but rather to highlight the sheer vastness of existence in which your current problem is occurring. Your dating life, as important as it feels, is one thread in the immense tapestry of your whole life, which is itself one story among billions unfolding on this planet. Applying this view from above immediately before, during, or after a date can be transformative. If you find yourself feeling nervous on your way to meet someone, take a deep breath and practice the zoom out. Remind yourself that this is one evening among thousands you will experience. This is one conversation with one person among the millions you will meet in your lifetime. The outcome, whatever it may be, will be absorbed into the grand narrative of your existence. This doesn't make the date unimportant, it simply frames it in its true context. It allows you to relax, to be more authentically yourself, and to approach the interaction with a sense of playful curiosity rather than desperate high stakes. When you release the pressure for this one event to be life-changing, you paradoxically create the space for something genuinely meaningful to occur. The ultimate gift of this Stoic secret is the profound sense of relief it offers. It is an antidote to the kind of perfectionism that fuels so much overthinking. When you realize that a single date or a single message is not carrying the weight of your entire future happiness, you can participate in the process with a lighter heart. You can enjoy the connection for what it is in the moment, a chance to meet another human being and share a piece of your world without burdening it with expectations it was never meant to bear. The view from above returns you to the present moment, grounded not in anxiety about the future, but in the calm, spacious awareness of your own ongoing, magnificent journey. Now we come to what might sound like the most intimidating of all the Stoic secrets, but which is in fact one of the most liberating. This is the practice of memento mori, the Latin phrase for remember you will die. At first glance, this seems dark or morbid, a thought to be avoided, but the Stoics saw it very differently. For them, keeping the finite nature of life at the forefront of their minds was not a cause for despair, but the ultimate motivation for living with purpose, clarity, and courage. It was a tool to jolt themselves out of complacency, to stop postponing their lives, and to immediately start living in alignment with their deepest values. When you apply this stark, beautiful truth to your dating life, it has the power to vaporize the petty anxieties and overthinking that hold you back. Consider this: the average human life is about 4,000 weeks long. That's it. Every single one of those weeks is a non-renewable resource. Now, think about how much time and mental energy overthinking can consume. How many of those precious weeks have you spent lost in mental loops about what someone meant by a text? How many evenings have you sacrificed to replaying a conversation, trying to decode a look or a tone of voice? When viewed through the lens of memento mori, this is not just unproductive, it is a profound form of waste. You are literally spending your finite, irreplaceable life currency on fictional problems that exist only in your own mind. The practice of remembering your mortality is the antidote to this waste. It forces you to ask a simple, piercing question. Is this worry worthy of my time, given that my time is so limited? This realization instantly reshapes your relationship with risk in dating. The fear of rejection is at its core a fear of a temporary, fleeting social discomfort. It's the fear of a moment of embarrassment, a bruised ego, a no that might sting for an hour or a day. But when you hold that fear up against the monumental truth of your own mortality, the imbalance is staggering. You are allowing the fear of a minor, passing moment to prevent you from pursuing a connection that could bring you years of joy, companionship, and love. Memento mori reframes the entire equation. It asks you, which will you regret more on your last day, the fact that you were rejected a few times, or the fact that you were too afraid to ever try? The regret of inaction, of chances not taken and feelings not expressed, is a far heavier burden to carry than the mild, temporary sting of rejection. This philosophy emboldens you to be radically authentic. If your time is limited, why would you spend a single second pretending to be someone you're not? Why would you hide your quirks, soften your opinions, or pretend to like things you don't, just to win the approval of someone who isn't a match for the real you? Memento mori pushes you to put your genuine self forward from the very beginning. It encourages you to express your interest openly and honestly, because withholding your truth is a form of self-betrayal that steals time from both you and the other person. When you operate from this place, you stop seeing dates as auditions and start seeing them as genuine discoveries. You are there to find out if there is a true fit, not to desperately win a part. This shift is incredibly attractive. It projects a confidence that comes not from arrogance but from a deep understanding of what truly matters. Let's make this practical. The next time you feel the familiar hesitation, the urge to wait 3 days to text, the fear of asking a direct question, the anxiety about being too forward with your interest, pause for just 5 seconds and practice memento mori. Silently tell yourself, my life is too short for this game, my time is too valuable to waste on hesitation. Let that thought fuel your action. Press send on that thoughtful message. Look them in the eye and say, I really enjoyed tonight and I'd love to see you again. Ask the question that's on your mind. By doing so, you are not being needy, you are being efficient with your one precious life. You are honoring your own journey by moving with intention and clarity, cutting through the fog of social convention and fear. This practice doesn't make you reckless, it makes you real. It transforms dating from a source of anxious speculation into a series of purposeful actions, each one a testament to your commitment to live fully and courageously, right up to the very last moment. This brings us to the 8th Stoic secret, a concept that can feel a bit paradoxical at first, but holds the key to unlocking a truly peaceful approach to dating. It's the idea of detaching from what the Stoics called preferred indifference. Now, don't let the unusual term throw you. A preferred indifferent is something that has practical value and is naturally preferable to have, but is not fundamentally good or bad in itself, and is not required for you to live a virtuous and fulfilled life. Think of things like wealth, health, reputation, and in our context, a successful romantic relationship or a fun, exciting date. These are all preferred. Of course, you would rather have a great relationship than be lonely. You would prefer an enjoyable date over an awkward one. But they are indifferent because your core happiness and self-worth, your eudaimonia, does not depend on them. Your character can shine just as brightly whether you are in a relationship or single. Overthinking in dating arises almost exclusively from getting this distinction backwards. We attach our entire sense of happiness and self-esteem to these external, preferred outcomes. We subconsciously tell ourselves, if this person likes me, then I am worthy. If this date goes well, then I will be happy. If this relationship works out, then my life will be complete. This is a recipe for mental torment. You have effectively handed over the keys to your inner peace to something you have zero control over, the feelings and actions of another person. Every text becomes a verdict on your worth. Every date becomes a high-stakes performance where your happiness is on the line. This immense pressure is what fuels the endless cycles of analysis and anxiety because the stakes feel impossibly high. The Stoic shift is to re-anchor your happiness where it truly belongs, in your own virtuous character. You pursue a great relationship as a preferred indifferent. You take the actions that a wise, courageous, just, and self-disciplined person would take. You put yourself out there, you are kind and authentic, you communicate clearly. But you do so with a deep, internal understanding that your success in life is measured by the quality of your actions, not by the outcomes they produce. Your self-worth is housed in your integrity, your kindness, and your courage, which are entirely within your control. The relationship itself is the preferred bonus, the wonderful addition to an already good life. Let's make this incredibly practical. Imagine you're preparing for a first date with someone you're very excited about. The old, attachment-based mindset would have you focused entirely on the outcome. I need them to like me. This has to go well. This mindset fills you with performance anxiety. The Stoic, detachment-based mindset prepares differently. Your internal monologue sounds like this: my goal for this evening is to act with virtue. I will be genuinely curious about this person's wisdom. I will have the courage to be my authentic self, even if that feels vulnerable courage. I will treat them with respect and give them my full attention, justice. And I will maintain my balance, remembering that this is one part of my life, not my entire life. Temperance. If I do that, I have already succeeded. Whether they want to see me again or not is a separate matter, an indifferent outcome that does not define my successful evening. This detachment is not cold or unfeeling. In fact, it's the opposite. It allows for more genuine connection because you are no longer seeing the other person as a source of validation. You are free to actually see them, to be present with them, and to enjoy their company for what it is, without the desperate undercurrent of needing them to fulfill you. You can appreciate the pleasant experience of a date without making it the sole source of your happiness. And if it doesn't lead to a second date, while you may feel a natural tinge of disappointment, it doesn't devastate you or send you into a spiral of self-doubt. Your foundation remains solid because it was never built on their approval in the first place. You can simply acknowledge, I preferred that outcome, but it wasn't meant to be. My good life continues, and I will continue to act virtuously as I move forward. This is the immense peace that comes from understanding what is truly yours and what is merely a pleasant but optional part of the journey. This ninth Stoic secret is one of the most empowering mindsets you can adopt, perfectly encapsulated in the phrase from Marcus Aurelius, "The obstacle is the way." At its core, this principle flips the entire script on how we perceive difficulty. It asserts that the impediments we face, the very things we see as blocking our path, are not just annoyances to be endured, but are in fact the essential, raw materials for our growth. They are the path itself. When you apply this radical reframe to the inevitable friction of dating, you transform your entire experience from a series of frustrating setbacks into a purposeful training ground for your character. Let's take the most common and painful dating obstacle, rejection. The instinctual default view is to see rejection as a full stop. It's a door slamming shut, a confirmation of your fears, a sign that you are not enough. This interpretation is what fuels the frantic overthinking that follows. You dissect every word, every gesture, searching for the fatal flaw that caused the shutdown. But the obstacle is the way asks you to see that same event through a completely different lens. Rejection is not a full stop, it's a redirect. It is not a verdict on your worth, but a rigorous test of your resilience. Every time you face a no and choose not to internalize it as a personal failure, but to accept it with grace and continue moving forward, you are building emotional muscle. You are practicing the Stoic virtue of fortitude. That resilience forged in the fire of disappointment becomes a quiet, unshakable confidence that is incredibly attractive. People are drawn to those who are not easily knocked off their center, and the only way to develop that quality is to be knocked down and get back up again and again. Now consider the obstacle of a truly awkward or difficult date. Perhaps the conversation is strained, your humor falls flat, or you discover a fundamental clash of values. The standard response is to see this as a wasted evening, a failure you'd rather forget. You leave feeling deflated and overthink everything you said. But through the Stoic lens, this awkward date is a masterclass in patience and emotional regulation. It's an opportunity to practice staying present and kind even when the social rewards aren't flowing. It tests your ability to find your own internal source of amusement and stability when the external situation is uncomfortable. Can you find the humor in the awkward silence? Can you remain courteous and engaged even when you know there's no romantic future? Succeeding in this not by having a perfect date, but by maintaining your own inner peace throughout an imperfect one, is a profound victory. It teaches you that your mood and self-composure do not have to be hostage to the success or failure of a social interaction. Even the modern phenomenon of ghosting, which can feel like a uniquely cruel and confusing obstacle, can be seen as the way. Being ghosted is a direct challenge to your need for closure and control. Your mind wants an answer, a reason, a final scene to the story. The obstacle is the way teaches you to find your own closure. It forces you to practice the art of letting go of what you cannot control with dignity. This is an advanced lesson in emotional independence. When you can look at a vanished conversation and instead of sending a barrage of demanding messages, simply think, "Their actions have given me all the information I need," and then peacefully move on, you have turned a painful experience into a demonstration of your own self-respect and inner strength. You have taken the obstacle and used it to walk the path of maturity. The ultimate power of this mindset is that it systematically dismantles the fear that is the engine of overthinking. If you begin to see every potential negative outcome not as a threat but as a training exercise, what is there left to fear? A challenging conversation becomes a chance to practice clear communication. A mismatch in expectations becomes an opportunity to practice setting boundaries. The uncertainty of not knowing where something is going becomes a lesson in practicing patience and living in the present moment. When you welcome these obstacles as your teachers, you stop trying to avoid them at all costs. You walk into the dating world with a sense of curiosity and even excitement about what each interaction will teach you about yourself. You are no longer a passive victim of circumstance hoping for smooth sailing. You become an active participant in your own growth, knowing that the rough seas are where you learn to be a better captain. This shift doesn't just eliminate overthinking, it turns the entire process of dating into a rewarding journey of self-discovery, where every single experience, especially the difficult ones, is making you a wiser, stronger, and more complete human being. Building on the idea that the obstacle itself is the way, we now turn to a 10th Stoic secret that directly confronts the very engine of overthinking, our deep-seated need for approval. This is the principle of acting with purpose, not for praise. At its heart, Stoicism is a philosophy of internal orientation. Its entire framework is designed to unhook your sense of self-worth from the fickle and unpredictable opinions of other people and anchor it firmly to your own consistent moral choices. In the context of dating, this single shift in intention is like disarming a bomb. It neutralizes the constant, low-grade anxiety that comes from performing for an audience of one. Think about the last time you went on a date feeling that familiar pressure to impress. You might have carefully chosen your stories, rehearsed your witty remarks, and monitored your date's reactions like a hawk, searching for any sign of approval, a laugh, a nod, a spark of interest. Every moment you spend in this mode, you are not truly on a date. You are in a job interview, and you are the desperate applicant. Your entire focus is external. Are they liking me? Am I saying the right thing? Do they think I'm attractive? This external focus is incredibly draining. It turns a conversation into a performance review, and it makes you hyper-aware of every micro-expression, every change in tone, every pause in the conversation. This is the fertile ground where overthinking takes root and flourishes. You leave the date exhausted, not from the interaction itself, but from the mental gymnastics of trying to manage someone else's impression of you. The Stoic alternative is to change your fundamental goal for the evening. Instead of walking in with the secret intention to win praise and validation, you walk in with the conscious purpose to act in accordance with your own principles. Your mission is no longer make them like me. Your mission becomes be the person I respect. This is a profound internal shift. You are now the judge of your own success. The criteria for a good date are no longer their laughter or their agreement, but your own integrity, your kindness, your curiosity, and your authenticity. Did you listen attentively when they spoke? That's a success. Did you have the courage to share a genuine opinion, even if it was unconventional? That's a success. Did you treat them with respect and courtesy throughout the evening? That, in the Stoic view, is a resounding victory, completely independent of whether they text you tomorrow. Let's make this concrete with an example. Imagine you're on a date and a controversial topic comes up, perhaps politics or a social issue you feel strongly about. The approval-seeking mind will immediately go into calculation mode. It will assess the other person's likely stance and then tailor your response to align with it, or at least to avoid causing offense. You might soften your true opinion, or you might even agree with something you don't believe, all for the sake of maintaining a pleasant atmosphere and securing their approval. The immediate result might feel safe, but the long-term cost is a subtle erosion of your self-respect. You have, in a small way, betrayed your own truth for the sake of a potential reward. Now contrast that with the Stoic approach. Your purpose is not to win praise, but to act with integrity. So, when that same topic arises, you state your view honestly, but you do so with the virtue of justice. That is, with respect for the other person's right to a different perspective. You might say, I actually see it a little differently. My experience has led me to believe that, but I'm genuinely curious to hear what you think. In this scenario, you have not guaranteed their agreement. You may have even discovered a fundamental incompatibility, but you have succeeded magnificently by your own internal scorecard. You practiced courage by speaking your truth. You practiced wisdom by framing it as your personal perspective, and you practiced justice by inviting their viewpoint into the conversation. Whether they are impressed or put off is now entirely beside the point. You acted with purpose, and that is the only reward you needed. This liberation from the outcome allows you to be truly present. The mental energy you once spent monitoring their reactions is now freed up to actually listen to what they are saying and to connect with them as a real person, not as a source of validation. This practice extends far beyond the date itself and into the treacherous territory of post-date analysis. When you have acted with purpose, the agonizing over every text message diminishes dramatically. You don't need to decode their response because your self-worth isn't encoded within it. You sent a thoughtful, genuine message because that is the kind of communicator you choose to be. Their reply, or lack thereof, is simply data about their character and interest level, not a report card on yours. By focusing on the purity of your own actions, the purpose, you become immune to the poison of seeking praise. You present a relaxed, confident, and genuinely attractive version of yourself precisely because you are no longer trying to be attractive. You are simply being with integrity and allowing the right people to be drawn to the authentic signal you are putting out into the world. Now, having anchored our actions in purpose rather than praise, we find ourselves ready to cultivate a quality that makes that purpose unshakable. This brings us to our 11th Stoic secret, a powerful metaphor drawn directly from the personal writings of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. He instructed himself to be like the rock against which the waves break, a steadfast presence that remains utterly unmoved by the constant, crashing turbulence of the sea around it. In the context of your dating life, the waves are all the unpredictable and often frustrating behaviors of the modern dating world. The flakiness, the mixed signals, the sudden ghosting, the lukewarm responses, and the sting of outright rejection. These external events are like the ocean. They will always be in motion and you cannot stop their churning, but you can, through deliberate practice, become the rock. You can develop an inner stability so profound that these waves may crash against you, but they cannot erode your peace. They cannot sweep you away into a riptide of overthinking and self-doubt. So, what is this rock actually made of? It is not built from arrogance or a cold, unfeeling heart. The true foundation of your inner rock is a non-negotiable commitment to your core values and your inherent self-worth. Think of your values, things like honesty, kindness, respect, and growth, as the very mineral composition of the stone. They are what give it its density and strength. Your self-worth is the unassailable fact of its existence. It is simply there, solid and real, regardless of whether the ocean is calm or stormy. When you know, deep in your bones, that your value as a person is constant and not subject to the approval or disapproval of any single date, you become impervious to the chaos. A flaky person who cancels last minute is no longer a personal insult that sends you into a spiral of, "What's wrong with me?" It is simply a wave, an external event that tells you something about their character and priorities, not yours. Their action becomes information, not indictment. Building this rock-like stability doesn't happen by accident. It is a daily practice, a form of mental strength training. One of the most powerful Stoic exercises for this is the practice of daily reflection. This isn't a long, drawn-out process. It can be as simple as spending just 5 minutes with your journal or in quiet thought at the end of each day. The Stoic questions to ask yourself are straightforward but profound. First, what waves crashed against me today in my dating life? Did I receive a confusing text? Did a date not go as I'd hoped? Did I feel the pang of insecurity? Acknowledge these waves without judgment. Then, the second and most crucial question, did I remain the rock? Where did I hold firm to my values, and where did I feel myself starting to crumble or get swept away by anxiety? Perhaps you held firm by not sending a reactive, needy message when you felt ignored. Or maybe you noticed you started to crumble when you spent an hour overanalyzing a brief reply. The goal is not to be perfect, but to be aware. This daily audit strengthens your self-awareness, which is the bedrock of self-control. Another essential practice for building this inner fortress is the cultivation of mindfulness in the very moment the wave hits. This is the micro-practice of creating a tiny space between the triggering event and your emotional reaction. Let's say you see that someone you've been talking to has been active on a dating app but hasn't replied to your message from yesterday. The initial wave of anxiety and insecurity begins to rise. This is the critical moment. Instead of immediately being carried away by the thought, "They're ignoring me, they don't like me, I said something wrong," you pause. You take one conscious breath and you label the wave for what it is. This is a feeling of insecurity. You then consciously reaffirm your rock-like nature. You might silently tell yourself, "My value is constant, I am not moved by this." You don't suppress the feeling, you simply choose not to let it dictate your actions or your inner state. You allow the wave of emotion to wash over you and then recede while you, the rock, remain. This repeated practice in the heat of the moment is what forges true emotional resilience. When you consistently practice being the rock, you send out a completely different energy into your dating life. You stop reacting to flakiness with franticness or to mixed signals with desperate attempts to decode them. This calm, centered presence is not only deeply empowering for you, but it is also incredibly attractive to healthy, mature potential partners. It communicates that you have a full and stable life, that you are not easily thrown off balance, and that you are looking for a connection, not a crutch. The storms of dating will always come and go, but by building this inner fortress through daily reflection and mindful presence, You ensure that you have a quiet, unshakable place to stand through it all, a place where overthinking cannot find a foothold because the foundation is simply too solid to be disturbed. And now we arrive at a deeply humanizing Stoic secret that cuts through the artificial pressure we often place on ourselves. This is the practice of consciously seeing others not as idealized projections or as harsh judges, but simply as human beings, flawed, complex, and vulnerable individuals just like you. Overthinking in dating thrives on a fundamental distortion. We build up the person sitting across from us into a perfect, all-seeing critic whose sole purpose is to evaluate our every word and gesture. We imagine them possessing a cool confidence we lack, an unwavering clarity about what they want, and a harsh scoring system for our performance. This mental creation is a phantom, a fiction that amplifies our anxiety and turns a simple conversation into a high-stakes tribunal. The Stoic remedy is to shatter this illusion with a heavy dose of reality. The next time you find yourself feeling small or judged in front of a date, take a deliberate moment to shift your perspective. Look at them and remind yourself of this simple, profound truth. They are human. They have their own intricate history of heartbreaks and embarrassments. They have woken up with anxiety about how they look. They have said something clumsy in a meeting and replayed it in their mind for hours. They have sent a text and immediately regretted the phrasing. They, too, are navigating a world full of uncertainties, hoping to be liked and trying their best to manage their own insecurities. They are not a polished marble statue of perfection. They are a living, breathing person with a nervous system that likely feels just as jittery as your own in this moment. This shift from seeing a date to seeing a human is transformative because it fundamentally changes the dynamic of the interaction. When you're facing a flawless critic, the goal is to avoid making a mistake. But when you're engaging with a fellow human, the goal is to connect. The pressure to be perfect evaporates, replaced by a natural curiosity about the unique person in front of you. You stop monitoring your own performance and start paying genuine attention to them. What are their passions? What makes them laugh? What little vulnerabilities do they reveal in their stories? This empathetic focus is not just a kindness to them, it is a liberation for you. It pulls you out of your own spinning head and into the shared reality of the present moment. Let's ground this in a very common scenario. You're on a date and you accidentally spill a little of your drink. The old, distorted mindset would interpret this as a catastrophic failure. Your inner critic screams. They think you're a klutz. You've ruined the sophisticated image you are trying to project. This thought triggers a cascade of overthinking and self-consciousness that can throw you off for the rest of the evening. But when you apply the Stoic practice of seeing your date as human, your internal reaction is completely different. You notice the spill, and instead of seeing a judgmental critic, you look up and see another person who has undoubtedly had their own share of clumsy moments. You might even make a light, self-deprecating joke, and chances are high they will respond with a warm, understanding smile, not because they are gracious gods, but because they too know what it's like to be human. The moment becomes a shared, relatable experience, a point of connection rather than a mark against you. This principle also applies powerfully to the post-date analysis that fuels so much overthinking. When you don't receive a text back, it's easy to demonize the other person or to imagine them as a cold, calculating figure who has found you wanting. The Stoic practice demands you humanize them even in their silence. Perhaps they are overwhelmed with a family issue. Maybe they are dealing with their own fear of intimacy and pulled back. It's possible they felt insecure and assumed you weren't interested. Seeing them as a complex human being with their own struggles and reasons, which likely have very little to do with you, prevents you from personalizing the outcome. It allows you to release the story that their actions are a definitive verdict on your worth. This doesn't excuse poor behavior, but it does free you from the additional, self-inflicted pain of constructing a narrative where you are the central failure. Ultimately, this practice fosters a profound sense of empathy that makes the entire dating landscape feel less like a battlefield and more like a shared journey. Everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle you know nothing about. When you approach each interaction with this understanding, you bring a softer, more genuine energy. You become more forgiving of small missteps, both theirs and your own. You become more courageous in showing your authentic self because you recognize that the person across the table is just as eager to be accepted for who they are. This Stoic secret doesn't just reduce overthinking. It transforms dating from a performance into a practice of compassionate human connection, where two imperfect people come together to see if their lives might fit, without the unbearable weight of having to be perfect for one another. Just as building a rock-solid inner foundation prepares you for the storms of dating, there is another, more active Stoic practice that forges your resilience in the fire of daily life, making you practically fearless when it comes to the uncertainties of romance. This is Stoic secret number 13, the powerful discipline of practicing voluntary discomfort. The ancient Stoics, from Musonius Rufus to Seneca, didn't just preach enduring hardship. They actively sought out manageable challenges to strengthen their character. They would intentionally wear simpler clothing, sleep on a harder bed, or go without food for a period. This might sound extreme or even masochistic, but their purpose was profoundly practical. It was a form of psychological vaccination. By willingly exposing themselves to minor, controlled discomforts, they were building a robust immunity to the fear of discomfort itself. In the modern context, this practice is a direct training ground for the emotional resilience required in dating. Think of it like this: your comfort zone is a cozy, temperature-controlled room. It's safe and predictable, but if you never leave that room, the moment you step outside into a light rain or a chilly breeze, it feels like a monumental hardship. You panic, you shiver, and you run back inside. This is exactly what happens in dating when you've become too accustomed to total comfort and control. The slightest potential for social discomfort, the risk of an awkward silence, the possibility of a rejected invitation feels so terrifying that you avoid it altogether. You stay in the safe room of inaction, which only makes the outside world seem even more intimidating. Voluntary discomfort is the practice of deliberately opening the window and letting in a draft. It's about acclimatizing your nervous system to the feeling of unease, so that when a larger, unpredictable social discomfort arises, your body and mind don't go into a full-blown panic. You've already learned through practice that you can handle it. So, what does this look like in your daily 21st century life? It's about making small, conscious choices that run counter to your immediate desire for ease. It could be as simple as taking a cold shower for the final 60 seconds of your morning routine. In that moment, as the icy water hits your skin, your entire instinct is to leap out. But you stay, you breathe through the initial shock, and you observe your own resistance. You prove to yourself in a tangible way that you can endure an unpleasant sensation and come out the other side perfectly fine, and in fact, often feeling more alert and alive. Another powerful practice is to occasionally skip a meal or delay your lunch by an hour. This isn't about punishment, it's about disconnecting your happiness from the immediate gratification of your appetites. When you feel the pang of hunger and choose not to immediately satisfy it, you are training your mind that a temporary state of wanting does not control you. You are building the muscle of patience and self-denial, which is the exact same muscle required to patiently wait for a text reply without spiraling into anxiety. Now, let's connect these seemingly unrelated physical practices directly to the dating arena. That cold shower is a masterclass in handling the initial chill of social risk. The moment you decide to walk across a room and introduce yourself to someone you find attractive, you feel a similar jolt of nervous energy. It's a social cold shower. But because you've trained with the actual cold water, your mind has a reference point. It knows this feeling. It knows that the initial shock passes and that you have the capacity to stay present and breathe through it. You've already proven your mettle in a more primal domain, so the social version feels less daunting. Similarly, practicing patience with hunger directly translates to practicing patience in the uncertain timelines of dating. When you can sit with the discomfort of a delayed meal, you are far better equipped to sit with the discomfort of a delayed text message. You've already reinforced the neural pathway that says, a feeling of want is just a feeling. It will pass, I am still okay. This prevents you from sending that impulsive, needy follow-up message that often sabotages a budding connection. This practice makes you bolder because it systematically dismantles the catastrophic predictions your mind loves to create. Before you ask someone out, your brain might scream. It will be so awkward if they say no, the discomfort will be unbearable. But if you've been voluntarily enduring discomfort on a regular basis, you can call its bluff. You can think, unbearable, I take cold showers for fun. I can handle a moment of social awkwardness. It's just another wave to let crash against me. This reframe is incredibly empowering. It allows you to take action from a place of strength rather than hesitating from a place of fear. You start to see asking someone out not as a high-stakes gamble with your self-esteem, but as another voluntary, manageable challenge, a social cold shower that will ultimately make you stronger regardless of the outcome. And when things don't go as planned, when you do face that rejection or that awkward date, your resilience is already primed. You've been training for this. The disappointment is just another form of discomfort, and you have a well-practiced playbook for navigating it with grace and moving forward, your spirit undimmed and your confidence intact. Following the empowering discipline of strengthening our resilience through voluntary discomfort, we arrive at a Stoic secret that serves as a beautiful and practical summary of much that has come before. This is the principle that your duty, and your duty alone, is to act well. In the grand theater of dating, you are not the director, the producer, or the other actor. You have not been cast in the role of puppet master, tasked with pulling strings to orchestrate a specific happy ending. You have only one job: to play your own part, your one specific role, with as much integrity, kindness, and authenticity as you can possibly muster. The reviews from the critics, the standing ovation, or the silence from the audience, the performance of your scene partner, these are all entirely outside the boundaries of your backstage duties. This reframe is so profoundly liberating because it surgically removes the primary source of dating anxiety, the desperate need to manage an uncontrollable outcome. Think about where your mental energy typically goes after a promising first date. It's almost never focused on your own conduct. Instead, it's spent in a frantic, future-oriented simulation, trying to predict and influence their next move. If I send this specific text, what will they think? How can I phrase it to guarantee a positive response? What if they don't reply? What does it mean if they take 3 hours instead of 2? This is the exhausting work of trying to do someone else's job. You are attempting to control their feelings, their schedule, and their decisions, all from a distance. The Stoic would tell you that this is not only a futile effort, but it is also an abandonment of your own post. You have left your own territory, your own actions unattended, while you wander aimlessly in a foreign land where you have no authority. So, what does it actually mean to define your duty in the context of a date? Your duty is beautifully simple and entirely within your command. It is to be respectful in your communication, showing up on time and giving the person your full attention. It is to be kind in your words and actions, listening with genuine interest and withholding harsh judgment. It is to be honest about your intentions and your feelings, not as a blunt weapon, but as a clear and respectful form of communication. It is to be courageous in expressing interest and equally courageous in walking away from situations that conflict with your values. Your duty is to manage your own emotional state, to practice temperance by not flooding someone's phone with messages when you feel anxious, and to act with justice by treating them as a whole person, not as a means to an end. This is your complete job description. It is a full-time occupation that requires your complete focus, leaving no spare mental capacity to micromanage the other person's responsibilities. Let's illustrate this with a clear before and after scenario. Imagine you've decided to ask someone out on a second date. The old, outcome-focused mindset would have you paralyzed by the potential result. The entire act becomes a transaction where your self-worth is the currency. Your inner monologue is a mess of conditional statements. I will only be happy and feel good about myself if they say yes. If they say no, it means I am not enough. This turns a simple invitation into a high-stakes emotional gamble. Now, let's apply the Stoic duty mindset. Your task is not to secure a yes. Your task is to perform the action of asking with integrity. You control drafting a clear, kind, and direct message. You control sending it at a reasonable time without manipulative games. You control your intention to be honest and vulnerable. The moment you hit send, your duty is complete. You have succeeded. You have performed your part well. The response, or lack thereof, now becomes their duty. It is their job to manage their schedule, their feelings, and their communication style. Their yes is a pleasant data point indicating shared interest. Their no or silence is equally valuable data, telling you that your paths are not aligned. In neither case does their action negate the success of your own. You fulfilled your duty, and that is the only report card you need to read. This philosophy transforms the entire dating landscape from a minefield of potential rejections into a peaceful training ground for your own character. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to practice a specific virtue. A coffee date is no longer about impressing someone. It's a 60-minute workshop in practicing the duties of presence, curiosity, and kindness. A difficult conversation about boundaries isn't a conflict to be feared. It's a practical exam in the duties of honesty and courage. By concentrating with all your mental energy on the quality of your own actions in the present moment, you effectively build a wall against the invading forces of future tripping and rumination. There is simply no room left to overthink what might happen later, because you are completely occupied with the meaningful, manageable task of doing the right thing right now. You walk through your dating life with the quiet confidence of a master craftsman who takes pride in the work itself, knowing that a job done well is its own profound and lasting reward, regardless of where the finished piece eventually ends up. It's a startlingly accurate truth that much of our pain is self-inflicted, a realization the Stoic philosopher Seneca captured perfectly when he said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Our minds are prolific authors of tragedy, composing entire novels of heartbreak and humiliation from the barest fragments of possibility. Nowhere is this more evident than in the world of dating, where the blank spaces of uncertainty are so often filled in with the darkest ink of our own fears. The date that hasn't happened yet becomes a stage for our projected social clumsiness. The text that hasn't arrived becomes the centerpiece of a story about our ultimate unlovability. We are not just reacting to events, we are actively suffering in advance, paying an emotional tax on a disaster that has not occurred and likely never will. This mental habit of catastrophizing is the engine of so much dating overthinking. It's the process of taking a single, neutral data point, like a delayed reply, and extrapolating it into a catastrophic future. The thought doesn't stop at "they haven't texted back." It escalates. "They must be bored with me. They're probably out with someone more interesting right now." This is the beginning of them pulling away. "Soon I'll be ghosted entirely and I'll be alone." Notice how the mind leaps from a simple delay to a future of utter isolation. This entire narrative is a work of fiction, a movie you are directing, producing, and starring in, yet you experience the anxiety as if it were a documentary reporting live events. The true suffering isn't in the delayed text, it's in the devastating epic your imagination has constructed around it. So, how do we stop being the authors of our own misery? The first and most crucial step is to develop the skill of recognizing when you have slipped from reality into imagination. This begins with mindful awareness of your own thoughts. You must learn to catch the catastrophic story as it begins to unfold. It often starts with a physical sensation, a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach. That's your signal to pause and ask a very direct question. Am I reacting to a verifiable fact right now, or am I reacting to a story I am telling myself about what this fact might mean? Almost always you will find yourself in the realm of story. The fact is the silent phone, the story is everything else. Merely making this distinction, this is a catastrophe narrative, not a fact, creates an immediate and powerful separation between you and the anxiety. You are no longer drowning in the story, you are observing it. Once you have identified the fictional narrative, the next step is to gently but firmly guide your focus back to the solid ground of the present moment and the objective facts at hand. This is a conscious act of mental redirection. Let's return to the example of the delayed text. The facts are these: you sent a message, a certain amount of time has passed without a reply. That is the entire reality of the situation. Everything else, the reasons for the delay, the person's feelings, the future of the connection, is speculation. Your job is to anchor yourself in that small, manageable set of facts. You can even state them to yourself plainly. My phone is quiet. I do not know why. That is all I know for certain. This isn't about suppressing the worry. It's about confining it to its proper, limited space rather than letting it colonize your entire mental landscape. To further dismantle the power of the imagined catastrophe, you can engage in a simple reality-checking exercise. Ask yourself, what is the absolute worst-case scenario that is realistically likely to happen here? In the case of the unanswered text, the realistic worst case is that the person has decided they are not interested and will not reply. That's it. It is not a public humiliation. It is not a verdict on your entire character. It is one person making one decision. Then follow up with an even more important question. And if that realistic worst case happens, can I handle it? The answer is almost always a resounding yes. You have handled disappointment before. You have moved on from rejections. Your life has continued. By confronting the actual, scaled-down worst-case scenario, you rob the exaggerated, imaginary one of its terrifying power. You realize that even if the thing you fear actually happens, you have the resources and resilience to cope with it. The monster under the bed, when finally looked at directly, is often just a shadow. The ultimate freedom in applying this Stoic secret comes from the profound understanding that the majority of your dating anxieties are not premonitions, they are phantoms. They are the mind's overzealous attempt to protect you by preparing for every possible danger, but in doing so, it creates dangers that do not exist. By learning to spot these fictional stories, to label them as imagination rather than reality, and to gently return your attention to the present, you reclaim an enormous amount of mental energy and peace. You stop paying the emotional price for tragedies that never come to pass. You begin to engage with dating as it actually is, a series of real moments and genuine interactions rather than as a threatening landscape of potential disasters waiting in a future that is largely a creation of your own anxious mind. This brings us to a particularly empowering Stoic secret that reframes the very nature of every single dating experience you will ever have. It's the understanding that everything, absolutely everything, is material for your virtue. The Stoics viewed the world as a kind of gymnasium for the soul, a place where every single circumstance, no matter how pleasant or difficult, could be used as raw material to exercise and strengthen your character. In the context of dating, this is a game-changing perspective. It means there is no such thing as a wasted date, a pointless interaction, or a true failure. Every coffee meeting, every text exchange, every promising connection, and every painful rejection is simply another piece of equipment in your personal training ground, each one perfectly designed to build a specific part of your inner strength. Let's break down what this looks like in practice, starting with a scenario most people would label as a clear failure: the boring date. You're sitting across from someone who gives one-word answers, shows little curiosity about you, and the conversation feels like pushing a boulder uphill. The conventional reaction is to check out mentally, count the minutes until you can leave, and then spend the rest of the night feeling frustrated that you wasted your time. But through the lens of this Stoic secret, this boring date is not a waste. It is a unique and valuable piece of material for practicing the virtue of patience. Your task shifts from trying to extract entertainment from the other person to actively exercising your own capacity for calm endurance. Can you stay present and grounded even when the external stimulation is low? Can you find a sense of inner contentment that isn't dependent on the other person being fascinating? Furthermore, it becomes material for creativity and compassion. Can you dig deeper and find more interesting, open-ended questions to ask? Can you practice seeing the humanity in this person who might just be incredibly nervous or socially inexperienced? When you approach the date this way, you are actively building character muscles, and you leave not with frustration, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who just completed a challenging workout. Now consider one of the most emotionally taxing experiences in modern dating: being ghosted. The initial sting is real, the confusion, the feeling of disrespect, the bruise to the ego. The overthinking mind goes into overdrive, trying to solve the unsolvable mystery of why. But when you see this event as material for your virtue, the entire dynamic shifts. Being ghosted becomes your prime material for practicing the advanced arts of forgiveness and detachment. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, isn't about condoning the other person's behavior. It's about releasing the toxic hold that their actions have on your own mind. It is an act of self-liberation. You practice forgiving them for their lack of courage or courtesy, not for their sake, but for your own peace. You recognize that their action says everything about their character and their own struggles, and very little about your inherent worth. Simultaneously, you are being given the perfect material to practice profound detachment. This is the ultimate test of your understanding that your happiness cannot be dependent on the closure provided by another person. Can you find your own closure? Can you look at the silent phone and, instead of firing off a series of anxious messages, simply accept the silence as your answer and peacefully let go? Mastering this turns one of the most painful dating experiences into one of your most powerful lessons in emotional sovereignty. Even a date that ends in outright rejection becomes high-quality raw material. It is a furnace for forging resilience and self-validation. In the moment you hear a kind but firm "no," you have a choice. You can use this material to build a story of inadequacy, or you can use it to practice dignity and strength. The Stoic approach is to see it as an opportunity to display courage and grace under fire. Can you accept the rejection with a genuine smile and a sincere wish for their well-being? Can you hold onto the unwavering knowledge that your value is not diminished by their decision? This moment is the material. Your graceful response is the virtue you are building. Each time you handle rejection with class, you are reinforcing a self-concept that is unassailable from the outside. You are proving to yourself in a tangible way that you're more solid than any single opinion. This mindset systematically eliminates the very concept of a failed date, which is the primary trigger for post-date overanalysis. If there is no failure, only training, then there is nothing to agonize over. You don't need to dissect every word you said because the purpose of the evening wasn't to win a prize, it was to practice. Did you practice patience? Did you practice courage? Did you practice kindness? These are the only questions that matter in your debrief. A date where you were authentically yourself, even if it didn't lead to a romantic spark, was a roaring success because you used the material to be virtuous. A date where you felt anxious but still asked thoughtful questions was a success because you used the material to be courageous. When you internalize this framework, you walk into every single interaction with a sense of purpose and curiosity, wondering not, will they like me? But which part of my character will I get to strengthen today? This transforms dating from a high-stakes evaluation into a low-stakes, high-reward practice of becoming the best version of yourself, one piece of raw material at a time. Following the profound mindset of using every experience as material for your virtue, we now come to a 17th Stoic secret that hones in on a very specific and practical skill, one that can dramatically reduce the mental noise that follows a date. This is the principle of speaking little and well. The Stoics, from Seneca to Epictetus, consistently warned against the dangers of idle, excessive, or careless speech. They advocated for a style of communication that was deliberate, truthful, and purposeful. In the often anxious context of dating, where the pressure to impress can turn a conversation into a frantic performance, this ancient advice becomes a modern superpower for cultivating connection and inner peace. The link between overthinking and talking too much is a direct one. When we're nervous, we tend to fill every silence with the sound of our own voice. We ramble, we over-explain, we rehearse stories in our head before we tell them, and we replay every sentence we uttered the moment we leave the date. This nervous chatter is often a defense mechanism, an attempt to control the other person's perception of us by ensuring they have a constant stream of curated information. The problem is, this very effort creates the very ammunition our inner critic uses to torture us later. Every unnecessary detail, every slightly exaggerated story, every clumsy joke becomes a piece of evidence for the post-date inquisition, where you stand trial in the court of your own mind for the crime of not being perfectly eloquent. The Stoic antidote is to shift your entire focus from being an interesting speaker to being a deeply interested listener. The goal is not to dominate the conversation with your wit and accomplishments, but to create a space where a genuine dialogue can unfold. When you prioritize listening, you accomplish several things at once. First, you immediately calm your own nervous system. Instead of using mental energy to plan your next witty remark while the other person is talking, you are fully present with what they are saying. This presence is not only calming for you, but it is also profoundly flattering to your date. Nothing makes a person feel more valued than being truly heard. Second, by listening intently, you gather authentic information. You learn who this person really is, their passions, their values, their sense of humor, rather than just seeing a reflection of your own performance. This allows you to determine true compatibility far more effectively than if you were both just taking turns performing monologues. So, what does it mean to speak little and well in a practical sense? It begins with embracing the power of the pause. In the middle of a conversation, rather than rushing to fill a moment of quiet with the first thing that pops into your head, you allow the silence to exist for a beat. You take a breath. This simple act creates a container for more thoughtful speech. When you do speak, your words are more likely to be considered and genuine. Speaking well doesn't mean using complex vocabulary or crafting perfect sentences. It means ensuring your words are truthful, kind, and relevant to the flow of the conversation. It's the difference between nervously launching into a long, rehearsed story about your recent promotion and, when asked about your work, offering a concise, honest answer and then turning the question back to them with a simple, "How about you?" What parts of your work are you most passionate about? One approach is a performance, the other is an invitation to connect. This practice pays enormous dividends after the date is over, effectively dismantling the machinery of analysis paralysis. When you have spoken little and well, there is simply less fodder for your overthinking mind to chew on. You don't lie awake at night agonizing over that rambling, slightly insecure story you told about your college years because you didn't tell it. You don't stress about whether you came on too strong with your opinions because you expressed one or two clear thoughts and then spent more time learning theirs. Your post-date review becomes a quiet, peaceful affair. You can reflect on the interaction with a sense of clean simplicity. You listened well, you spoke with intention, and you were authentically yourself in the moments you chose to contribute. There are no linguistic landmines to navigate in your memory, no cringe-worthy moments of verbal excess to regret. Your communication was a reflection of your inner calm, and that calm remains with you long after the conversation has ended, proving that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all, and the most meaningful words are the few that carry the weight of your sincere attention. This 18th Stoic secret invites you to discover the most portable and powerful sanctuary you will ever know, a place you carry with you at all times. It's the practice of withdrawing into yourself, what the Stoics described as retreating to your inner citadel. Imagine your mind as a fortified castle with thick, impenetrable walls. Inside this castle is a quiet, spacious courtyard where a profound sense of peace resides. The beauty of this fortress is that its walls are built not of stone, but of your core values, your reasoned judgments, and your unshakable understanding of what is truly yours to control. The noisy, chaotic world of dating, the flurry of notifications, the unpredictable reactions of others, the social pressures, all of that exists outside the walls. You are always just one conscious thought away from stepping back inside, closing the gate, and returning to a state of calm self-possession. So, how do you actually use this secret in the heat of a modern dating moment? Let's take the most common trigger. You've just sent a text that felt a little vulnerable, maybe asking for a second date or expressing a more personal feeling. The moment you hit send, you feel that familiar jolt of anxiety. Your hand might feel a little clammy, your heart rate picks up, and your mind starts its frantic dance of anticipation and dread. This is the critical juncture. Instead of leaving your mental door wide open, allowing every anxious thought to rush in and ransack your peace, you consciously choose to withdraw. You don't need to leave the room or even close your eyes. You simply turn your attention inward. It begins with a single, deep breath. As you inhale, you mentally picture yourself stepping back from the screen of your phone, from the whirlwind of what-ifs, and crossing the threshold into your inner courtyard. You leave the phone and all the uncertainty it represents outside the gate. Once inside, you reconnect with the foundational truths that form the bedrock of your citadel. You remind yourself of your own virtues. I acted with courage by being honest. I acted with integrity by expressing my genuine interest. You reaffirm the dichotomy of control. I controlled sending a thoughtful message. I do not control the reply. Their response is outside these walls. You might even revisit the view from above, reminding yourself of the vast, ongoing story of your life, of which this single text is but a tiny sentence. This entire process can take less than 30 seconds, but its effect is transformative. You are no longer a helpless bystander tossed about by external events. You are the calm, centered guardian of your own inner peace. This practice is equally powerful during the date itself. Imagine you're in the middle of a conversation and you suddenly hit a lull. The silence stretches for a few seconds longer than feels comfortable. The old, anxious pattern would be to panic internally, to feel the pressure to perform and instantly fill the void with the first thing that pops into your head, often leading to a forced or awkward comment that you'll later overthink. But with the tool of withdrawal, you handle it differently. You notice the silence, and instead of interpreting it as a threat, you welcome it as a chance to retreat inward for just a moment. You take a quiet breath, feeling your feet on the floor, and you reconnect with your intention to be present and authentic. You realize that you don't need to entertain your date every single second. The silence can be a shared, peaceful moment rather than a void to be feared. From this place of inner calm, you're far more likely to come up with a genuine, curious question or a thoughtful observation when you do choose to speak again, because your words are flowing from a place of stability, not from a place of frantic insecurity. The ultimate gift of this Stoic secret is that it makes you emotionally self-sufficient. Your mood and your sense of self-worth are no longer held hostage by the ping of a notification or the mood of the person sitting across from you. You have a reliable, internal home to return to whenever the external world feels overwhelming. This self-sufficiency is not only a tremendous relief for you, but it is also incredibly attractive. It projects a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are complete on your own. You are engaging in dating not from a place of neediness, seeking someone to fill a void, but from a place of wholeness, looking to share your already rich inner world with another. By regularly practicing this mental withdrawal, you train your mind to default to calmness rather than anxiety, ensuring that no matter what storms may arise in the unpredictable sea of dating, you always have a safe harbor within yourself to which you can return. Imagine for a moment that you could completely transform the emotional stakes of a date before you even walk out the door. This 19th Stoic secret, the principle of being content with little, offers you exactly that power. At its core, Stoicism teaches that the surest path to tranquility is not in acquiring more, but in wanting less. When you transfer this radical idea from the realm of material possessions to the world of dating, it becomes a profound tool for disarming the anxiety that so often surrounds meeting someone new. The problem isn't dating itself, it's the enormous, often invisible weight of expectation we place upon it. We go into a simple coffee meeting secretly hoping that this person will be the one, that we'll feel an instant movie-perfect spark, and that this single hour will somehow solve the puzzle of our romantic future. It is this mountainous expectation, this need for a specific, grandiose outcome, that creates the crushing pressure which fuels our overthinking. Think of your expectations as a heavy backpack you're forced to carry on every date. Inside that backpack is the hope for instant chemistry, the fear of being rejected, the desire for a flawless connection, and the storybook fantasy of a perfect meet cute. It's no wonder you feel exhausted and anxious before you've even said hello. The Stoic practice of being content with little invites you to take that backpack off and set it down. You're not going on a date to find your entire future. You're going to have a single conversation with another human being. Your goal is not to secure a soulmate, but to share a pleasant 45 minutes and learn something about another person's world. When you consciously shrink your expectations down to this simple, manageable scale, you perform a kind of psychological magic. The pressure evaporates. The date is no longer a high-stakes evaluation. It becomes a low-stakes social interaction, no more fraught with peril than chatting with a friendly stranger in a bookstore. Let's make this incredibly practical. Before your next date, take 60 seconds to actively reset your expectations. Instead of letting your mind race ahead to fantasies of a future together or fears of awkward rejection, consciously define what being content with little means for this specific event. Your goal for the evening is this: to have one enjoyable conversation. That is the complete and total measure of your success. You are not there to impress, to seduce, or to audition for the role of lifelong partner. You are there to be present, to listen, and to share a bit of your own story. If you walk away having learned one interesting thing about the other person and having shared one genuine thing about yourself, you have triumphed. This reframe is disarmingly simple, but its effect is profound. It allows you to enter the interaction with a sense of lightness and curiosity, completely foreign to the heavy burden of performance anxiety. Consider the alternative. When you expect a fireworks display of chemistry, a single lukewarm joke or a moment of quiet feels like a catastrophic failure. Your mind instantly begins its post-mortem. The spark isn't there, they're not laughing enough, this is going nowhere. This internal narrative turns a normal, human interaction into a source of stress and self-doubt. But when you are content with the simple goal of a pleasant chat, those same moments are interpreted entirely differently. A quiet moment becomes a comfortable pause, not an awkward silence. A joke that doesn't land becomes a simple mismatch in humor, not a verdict on your entire personality. You are free to simply observe the dynamic as it unfolds without the desperate need to force it into a predetermined mold of success. This mental shift doesn't make you passive or unenthusiastic. It makes you more open and receptive to what is actually happening, rather than being trapped. A story about what you think should be happening. This philosophy extends beautifully to the treacherous territory of post-date analysis. When your expectation was simply to have a nice conversation, your post-game review becomes incredibly straightforward. You ask yourself one question: did I have a pleasant conversation? If the answer is yes, the evening was a complete success. It does not matter if they text you tomorrow. It does not matter if you felt a romantic click. Your goal was achieved in the moment. This single shift severs the link between the experience itself and the anxious waiting period that so often follows. You are no longer desperate for a specific outcome to validate your evening, because the validation was built into the simple, achievable goal you set for yourself. You enjoyed a conversation, mission accomplished. Any follow-up is simply a bonus, a preferred indifferent that you can welcome without needing it for your own peace of mind. Ultimately, being content with little in dating is not about settling for less. It is about appreciating more. It is about finding the richness in the simple, unscripted moments of human connection without demanding that they conform to a grand narrative. It allows you to collect experiences, not just outcomes. Some dates will be wonderfully interesting conversations with people you're glad to have met, even if you never see them again. Others might be mildly awkward but still offer a lesson in patience or a good story to tell. And yes, some might genuinely spark and lead to something more. But by holding all of these potential outcomes lightly, by being content with the fundamental offering of a shared hour, you free yourself from the tyranny of expectation. You trade the exhausting pursuit of a perfect result for the quiet, consistent satisfaction of engaging with the world as it is, one simple, pleasant conversation at a time. This profound idea, Stoic secret number 20, might sound like the boldest claim of them all, one that seems to defy the very real pain we feel in our chest when things don't work out. The Stoics declared that no harm can truly come to a good man. Now, before you dismiss this as an impossible ideal, let's unpack what they actually meant, because it's not about becoming an emotionless robot who doesn't feel disappointment. It's about a radical redefinition of what harm actually is. For the Stoic, true harm isn't physical pain or social embarrassment or even the loss of a relationship. True, lasting, significant harm is moral harm. The harm you do to your own character by acting against your virtue. It is the internal damage you inflict upon yourself when you choose to be dishonest, cowardly, unjust, or intemperate. Your core self, your essential worth, resides in your capacity for virtue, and that is something no external event can ever take from you unless you willingly surrender it. Let's bring this revolutionary concept directly into the dating arena, where we often feel the most harmed by the actions of others. When someone rejects you, ghosts you, or chooses someone else, the feeling of hurt is undeniably real. But the Stoic asks a crucial, probing question. Has your character been damaged? Has your ability to be a good person been diminished? The answer is a resounding no. Their action is an external event, a piece of data about their own preferences and journey. It has no power to reach inside you and corrupt your integrity, your kindness, or your courage. The only way you can truly be harmed in that scenario is if you react in a way that betrays your own values. The harm would come if you responded to their rejection with a bitter, angry text, if you stalked their social media in a jealous rage, or if you internalized their no as a global truth and started acting from a place of desperate neediness. That is the real harm, the self-inflicted wound to your character. The rejection itself is just the weather outside. It's your choice to either stay dry in the shelter of your virtue or run out into the storm and make yourself sick. This understanding provides you with an unshakable foundation of self-worth, one that is completely independent of the dating market's volatile opinions. Imagine walking into every date with this knowledge firmly anchored in your mind. Your value is not on the table for negotiation, it is a settled fact. You are there to discover if there is a mutual fit, not to beg for validation. This shifts the entire dynamic from one of seeking approval to one of shared exploration. When you know that your worth is internal and non-negotiable, the opinions of others, while you can listen to them respectfully, simply lose their power to devastate you. A date's lukewarm reaction doesn't mean you are lukewarm. It means your particular combination of qualities isn't a match for their particular set of preferences. That's all. It is a simple mismatch, not a moral failing. This realization is like a mental emancipation proclamation for the overthinking mind, which thrives on the fear that our value is constantly being judged and found wanting. Consider a very practical example. You go on 3 dates with someone you really like and you feel a genuine connection. You've been your authentic, kind, and engaging self. Then you receive a text saying they've decided to see someone else exclusively. The initial pang of disappointment is natural, but now apply the Stoic test of true harm. Did you act with virtue throughout this short courtship? If the answer is yes, you were honest, you were present, you were courageous in showing interest, then you emerge from this situation completely unscathed in the only way that truly matters. Your goodness, your moral character is utterly intact. In fact, it's stronger for having been exercised. The other person's choice cannot touch that core self. You can feel the sadness of a lost opportunity while simultaneously holding the unshakable knowledge that you are fundamentally undamaged. You can wish them well and move forward with your head held high, your self-respect gleaming, ready for the next connection because your foundation was never cracked. This is the ultimate liberation from overthinking. The mental chatter that screams, "What's wrong with me?" after a rejection is based on the false premise that your worth was ever in question. When you internalize that no harm can come to your good character, that chatter is silenced at its source. There is nothing to overthink because the most important part of the equation, your own integrity, is already secure. You are freed from the exhausting work of trying to control how others perceive you, because you know that their perception, while interesting, is not the final arbiter of your reality. You can engage in the dance of dating with a light heart and a quiet mind, not because you don't care, but because you care more about something far more durable and precious: the unwavering commitment to being a good person regardless of the outcome. This isn't a shield against feeling life. It's an anchor in the storm, ensuring that no matter how high the waves of romantic uncertainty may get, the core of who you are remains solid, virtuous, and truly unassailably safe. Now we arrive at a Stoic practice that turns the quiet of your evening into a powerful classroom for your personal growth. This is Stoic secret number 21, the transformative discipline of the evening review. Picture this: you're home after a date, the door closes, and suddenly your mind is a crowded room of voices, replaying moments, questioning your words, and imagining their thoughts. This is the raw material of overthinking, and left unchecked, it can spiral into a sleepless night of mental chaos. The Stoics, however, had a structured antidote for this very human tendency. Philosophers like Seneca would end each day with a deliberate, calm examination of their actions, not to punish themselves but to learn. In the context of dating, this practice transforms that potentially anxious post-mortem from a trial of your social performance into a focused, compassionate lesson in self-improvement. So, how do you conduct this review in a way that builds you up rather than tears you down? It begins with setting the right tone. This is not a brutal interrogation under a blinding light. It is a quiet conversation with your wisest self. Find a few minutes of solitude, perhaps with a notebook or simply in your own thoughts, and approach your date with a gentle curiosity. The entire exercise revolves around two fundamental Stoic questions, asked with the calm detachment of a scientist observing an experiment. The first question is, where did I act in alignment with my virtues today? This is your chance to acknowledge and reinforce your own growth. Did you have the courage to ask a thoughtful, personal question? That's a point for courage. Did you listen attentively without interrupting, even when you were excited to share your own story? That's a demonstration of justice and respect. Did you practice temperance by not overindulging in a third glass of wine just to calm your nerves? Celebrate that act of self-regulation. By consciously noting these victories, you're wiring your brain to recognize and repeat virtuous behavior, building a powerful and positive self-image that is based on your own actions, not on someone else's reaction. Then you move to the second, equally important question. Where did I let fear or impulse control me? Notice the language here. It's not, where did I fail? But where did I let fear take the wheel? This reframe is crucial. It separates your core self from the temporary emotional reaction. Perhaps you noticed yourself nervously talking over your date when a topic you're passionate about came up. Instead of berating yourself for being rude, you simply note, in that moment, my eagerness overrode my virtue of being a good listener. Maybe you withheld your true opinion on a movie because you sensed they liked it and you wanted to avoid disagreement. That's a moment where the fear of disapproval swayed you from the virtue of authentic courage. The goal is not self-flagellation, it is clear-eyed recognition. You are gathering data on your own patterns, identifying the specific situations where your lower impulses tend to hijack your higher intentions. This structured reflection systematically dismantles the chaotic nature of overthinking. Ordinary rumination is a tangled mess of what did they think of me and why did I say that? It's a storm of unanswerable questions focused on the external and the past. The evening review, by contrast, gives you a clear map to navigate that storm. It forces your mind off the endless loop of what if and onto the solid ground of what is. You are no longer obsessing over the ambiguous smile they gave when you left. You are evaluating a concrete, internal metric. Did I act with integrity as I walked away? This shift from external speculation to internal assessment is profoundly calming. It puts you back in the driver's seat of your own emotional life. The review provides a definitive endpoint to the mental churn. Once you have asked and answered these two questions, the event is officially processed. You have extracted its wisdom. There is no more need to lie awake dissecting it because you have already completed the analysis. You can grant yourself permission to close the book on that chapter of the day and rest. To make this truly practical, let's walk through a brief example. Imagine your review of a recent first date. You start with the virtues. You acknowledge that you are punctual and prepared, a simple act of respect. You commend yourself for asking thoughtful follow-up questions that showed you were genuinely listening, an exercise of wisdom and justice. Then you turn to the areas for growth. You recall a moment when they mentioned a vacation to a place you've always wanted to visit, and you immediately launched into a long, detailed story about your own travel dreams, unintentionally steering the conversation away from their experience. Your note is, I let my enthusiasm override my curiosity. I will practice holding space for others' stories before sharing my own. Finally, you admitted you felt a pang of anxiety when you saw them check their phone, and you crafted a story that they were bored. Your note is, I allowed an impression of disinterest to cause internal disturbance without verifying it. I will practice sitting with that initial discomfort without building a catastrophic narrative. With these insights gathered, the date is no longer a source of ambiguous anxiety. It is a completed lesson. You have concrete takeaways for your next interaction, and you can release the mental energy previously spent on chaotic overthinking, knowing you have already done the work to become a slightly wiser, more self-aware version of yourself for tomorrow. But what if the sting of a single interaction didn't have to linger for days, coloring your entire mood and self-perception? This brings us to our 22nd Stoic secret, a profound two-part insight from the personal writings of Marcus Aurelius that serves as a powerful antidote to taking any single dating outcome personally. He wrote, "The world is change, life is opinion." At first glance, this might seem abstract, but when applied to the emotional roller coaster of dating, it becomes a practical tool of immense liberation. This single statement helps us navigate two of the biggest traps of overthinking: the belief that a current situation is permanent, and the conviction that another person's opinion is an objective fact about our worth. Let's unpack the first part: the world is change. This is a fundamental recognition of the universe's only constant impermanence. Nothing stays the same. Seasons turn, trends fade, and people evolve. In dating, we often forget this. We meet someone, feel a spark, and immediately project that feeling into a fixed future. Or, more painfully, we experience a rejection and interpret it as a permanent, unchangeable verdict. We think they don't like me, and we embed that idea in stone as if it's a law of nature that will never be revised. But the Stoic view reminds us that this is a fantasy. The person who seemed lukewarm or distracted on a Tuesday night might be a completely different person on a Friday afternoon. Their own life is in a state of constant flux. Perhaps they were preoccupied with a work deadline, recovering from an illness, or simply not in the right headspace to connect. Their capacity for attraction, their mood, their openness, all of it is as fluid and changing as the weather. This principle also applies beautifully and comfortingly to your own feelings. How many times have you been completely captivated by someone on a first date, only to realize on the second or third meeting that the initial chemistry was misleading and you're actually not a good fit? Your own opinion changed as you gathered more information. Or perhaps you've experienced the opposite, a first date that felt a bit awkward or meh, but you gave it another chance and discovered a slow-burning, deeper connection that grew over time. When you truly internalize that the world is change, you stop seeing every first impression as a final judgment. You understand that a single date is merely one data point in an ever-unfolding story. It is a snapshot, not the entire film. This realization allows you to hold every outcome much more lightly. A no today is not a no forever. Your own feelings of disappointment today will not be your feelings next week. Everything is in motion, and this inherent impermanence means that no single moment, no matter how painful or euphoric, gets to define your entire romantic journey. Now let's dive into the second, equally transformative part of the quote: life is opinion. This is where we tackle the core of the overthinking epidemic. When someone doesn't text us back or they say they're not feeling a romantic connection, our mind instantly converts their subjective, personal opinion into an objective, universal truth. We don't think this is one person's current perspective. We think this is proof that I am unlovable, boring, or unattractive. We take their internal, fleeting opinion and we build a fortress of self-doubt with it. The Stoic practice is to shatter this cognitive error by relentlessly reminding yourself that an opinion is just that: a viewpoint, a perspective, a judgment formed inside someone else's mind, based on their own unique history, preferences, biases, and mood. It is not a scientific measurement of your intrinsic value. To make this concrete, consider a simple analogy. Imagine you offer a slice of pizza to 10 different people. Some will love it, some will think it's just okay. One might be allergic to gluten and have to decline. Another might be a strict vegan and find the very concept unappealing. Does the opinion of the vegan mean the pizza is objectively bad? Of course not. It simply means the pizza does not align with that individual's specific dietary preferences and values. Dating works in exactly the same way. You are the pizza, a complex, unique combination of qualities, flavors, and ingredients. The people you date are the tasters, each with their own deeply ingrained palate. One person might be looking for a sharp, spicy flavor, while you are a rich, savory one. Another might have had a bad experience with basil and now avoids anything that reminds them of it, even if your basil is of the highest quality. Their no thank you is a statement about their palate, not an indictment of your recipe. This reframe is not about dismissing other people's feelings, it's about correctly categorizing them. When you receive a rejection, your task is to see it for what it is, a piece of data indicating a mismatch in preferences, timing, or circumstance. It is not a transfer of truth about your soul. Their opinion is a tiny, subjective dot in the vast constellation of human perspectives. By refusing to promote their opinion to the status of objective fact, you drain the situation of its personal toxicity. You can acknowledge the disappointment without letting it contaminate your self-concept. You can think, their opinion is that we are not a match. That is their subjective reality right now. It does not cancel out my reality, which includes my own knowledge of my kindness, my passions, and my capacity to love. This mental separation is the key to moving on without the endless rumination. You are no longer trying to solve the unsolvable puzzle of why, because you accept that the answer lies in the labyrinth of their own unique and changing internal world, a place you were never meant to map. You are freed to simply accept the outcome, learn what you can, and continue on your path, your sense of self intact and your eyes open to the next ever-changing opportunity. Now we find ourselves at a point in the journey where we can actively reframe the very events that typically send us into a tailspin of self-doubt. This is Stoic secret number 23. Find the lesson in every setback. Up to now, we've discussed how to accept outcomes and manage our judgments, but this principle takes a more proactive stance. It moves beyond mere acceptance and into the realm of active inquiry. The Stoic doesn't just endure a difficult experience, they interrogate it. They approach every rejection, every mismatched connection, and every awkward silence not as a personal failure, but as a curious student approaching a puzzle. The central question shifts from the overthinker's desperate, "Why did this happen to me?" to the empowered Stoic's, "What can this teach me?" This simple shift in questioning transforms you from a passive victim of circumstance into an active archaeologist of your own growth, digging through the debris of a setback not for bones to pick but for treasures of insight. Let's be clear about what this doesn't mean. This isn't about engaging in a masochistic search for your own flaws. It's not about blaming yourself and thinking, "The lesson is that I'm not good enough." That is just overthinking in a different, more self-punishing costume. The true Stoic lesson is always forward-looking and practical. It's about extracting actionable data that sharpens your understanding and refines your approach for the future. An awkward date, for instance, is a goldmine of practical lessons if you know how to sift for them. Instead of replaying the cringe-worthy moments in a loop of embarrassment, you can calmly dissect the interaction. Perhaps the conversation felt forced because you realized you and your date have wildly different senses of humor. The lesson isn't, "I'm not funny." The lesson is a crucial piece of data about your compatibility with a specific personality type. It clarifies what you need in a partner to feel intellectually and emotionally stimulated. Another lesson might be about your own communication style. Did you find yourself talking too much when you were nervous? That's a valuable insight. The next date becomes an opportunity to practice the virtue of listening more intently. The setback becomes a personalized training module, highlighting exactly which social muscles need a little more strengthening. This practice becomes especially powerful when applied to one of the most common and painful dating experiences, being ghosted. The initial reaction is almost always a confused and hurt search for answers. What did I do wrong? Why didn't they just tell me? This line of questioning leads nowhere but in circles because you are trying to solve a mystery with no clues. The Stoic approach abandons this futile search for their motives, a domain you cannot control, and turns the spotlight onto the only thing you can, your own response and the lessons you can draw. The first lesson ghosting often teaches is about emotional self-sufficiency. It tests your ability to find your own closure, to look at a silent phone, and instead of firing off a series of increasingly anxious messages, peacefully accept that their actions have provided all the answer you need. This is a masterclass in detachment. Another lesson might be about recognizing low-integrity behavior early. If someone vanishes without a word after a few dates, that tells you something profound about their character and their capacity for difficult conversations. The lesson is that you've been saved from investing more time in someone who lacks the courage for basic respect. This reframe doesn't erase the initial sting, but it swiftly overlays it with a sense of relief and a clear, empowering takeaway. Even the sharp sting of direct rejection holds within it a hidden curriculum for your growth. When someone says, "I just don't feel a romantic connection," it's easy to hear that as a global statement on your attractiveness or worth. But the Stoic asks you to hear it differently, as a specific piece of feedback about a unique dynamic between two people. The lesson here is often about the beautiful and necessary reality of fit. You can be a perfectly crafted key, but you will only unlock the locks you are designed for. Rejection is the universe's way of quickly and efficiently showing you a lock that your key doesn't fit, saving you the trouble of jiggling it uselessly for months. This is invaluable information. It helps you refine your understanding of who you are and who you are truly looking for. Perhaps the lesson is that you need to be more upfront about your own values or life goals early on to better filter for compatibility. Or maybe the lesson is that you are projecting a fantasy onto someone who wasn't actually available, teaching you to see people more clearly for who they are, not for who you wish they could be. By making this quest for the lesson a consistent habit, you systematically rewire your brain's response to difficulty. The neural pathways that once led directly to frustration and helplessness are now rerouted toward curiosity and empowerment. A dating setback no longer signals the end of a story. It becomes the intriguing first page of a new chapter in your self-education. You start to see your romantic journey not as a straight line toward a destination, but as a series of experiments, each one yielding data that makes you wiser, more resilient, and more precisely aligned with what you truly want and deserve. The anxiety of not knowing what went wrong is replaced by the quiet confidence of knowing exactly what you learned. You stop collecting scars and start collecting diplomas from the school of life, each one certifying that you have grown just a little wiser, a little stronger, and a little more ready for the genuine connection that is inevitably making its way toward the person you are becoming. And that brings us to a truth so fundamental to Stoicism that it serves as the capstone for so much of what we've discussed. This is the 24th secret. Your mind is not your enemy in the dating world. It is, in fact, your single greatest asset. The entire Stoic philosophy rests on this one pivotal insight. We are rational beings gifted with the power of logic, discernment, and conscious choice. The problem, the Stoics would argue, is not that we think too much, but that we allow our thoughts to think us. Overthinking is not the proper use of your mind. It is the mind's hijacking by primitive fears and unchallenged impressions. It is your greatest asset being used against you, like using a master surgeon's scalpel to nervously pick at a hangnail. It's not just a waste of the tool, it's actively causing damage. The real work, then, is to reclaim that instrument, to take it back from the chaotic autopilot of anxiety, and learn to wield it with the precision and purpose for which it was designed. So, what does it mean to actively direct your thoughts rather than being passively swept along by them? It begins with recognizing that you are not your thoughts. You are the conscious observer behind the thoughts. Anxious mental chatter is like a radio that's been left on, playing a station of fear and speculation in the background of your life. Most of us live as if we are the radio, broadcasting and believing every song of doom that comes through the speaker. The Stoic practice is to realize you are the one listening to the radio. And as the listener, you have the ultimate power to change the station, to turn down the volume, or even to switch it off entirely. This shift in identity from being the thought to being the thinker of the thought is the first and most profound step toward mental freedom. It creates a crucial sliver of space between a triggering event and your reaction to it, and in that space lies your power to choose a different response. Let's translate this into a moment you know all too well. You see that someone you've been dating has been active on social media but hasn't replied to your text from hours ago. The anxious radio in your mind immediately cranks up the volume. The announcer's voice, dripping with faux concern, declares they're ignoring you, they've lost interest. You said something wrong. In the old, passive mode, you would simply accept this broadcast as the news. Your stomach would clench, your mood would sour, and you'd spend the next hour in a spiral of mental detective work. But now, with the awareness that you are the listener, you can intervene. You can look directly at that anxious thought and, with the rational part of your mind, subject it to a simple cross-examination. You ask it two of the most powerful questions you will ever pose. First, is this thought absolutely, verifiably true? And second, is dwelling on this thought in any way helpful to me right now? The first question, is it true, forces you out of the world of fearful speculation and into the world of objective fact. The fact is that they have not replied. The thought that they are ignoring you or they've lost interest is not a fact. It is one of many possible interpretations. It is a story. Your rational mind can now generate alternative, equally plausible stories with ease. Perhaps they saw the message while in a meeting and forgot to reply. Maybe they want to give it a thoughtful response when they have more time. It's possible they're having a difficult day and are emotionally drained. By generating these alternatives, you demonstrate to yourself that the initial catastrophic story is just one narrative among many, and not necessarily the most likely one. You break its monopoly on your emotional state. The second question, is this helpful? Is the knockout blow to overthinking, even if, for the sake of argument, the worst-case scenario were true, is sitting here and ruminating on it going to change the outcome? Will it make them text you faster? Will it make you feel more confident and attractive? The answer is a resounding no. In fact, it does the exact opposite. It drains your energy, makes you feel insecure, and can even lead you to send an impulsive, needy message that actually harms the connection. By recognizing that the thought is not helpful, you give yourself permission to deliberately release it. You can consciously decide, this line of thinking is not serving me. I am choosing to redirect my attention to something that is within my control and that adds value to my life right now. This is not positive thinking, it is purposeful thinking. You are using your mind's executive function to fire the anxious radio announcer and hire a calm, rational project manager who is focused on effective action. This practice of taking command of your inner dialogue is a muscle, and like any muscle, it grows stronger with consistent training. Every time you catch an anxious thought and subject it to this rational scrutiny, you are doing a mental rep. You are strengthening the neural pathways of reason and weakening the well-worn paths of panic. Over time, this changes your default setting. Instead of automatically spiraling into a story of rejection, your mind will begin to automatically pause and ask, wait, what's the evidence here? This is the ultimate reclamation of your greatest asset. You are no longer a victim of your own mental weather, tossed about by every storm of insecurity. You become the calm, steady captain of your own ship, using your rational mind as a sophisticated navigational system to steer through the uncertain waters of dating, not with frantic fear, but with calm, confident command. And now we arrive at our final Stoic secret, a piece of wisdom so timeless and universal that it echoes across centuries and cultures, finding a perfect home within the Stoic heart. This is the profound understanding that this too shall pass. Whatever dating anxiety is gripping you in this moment, whatever heartache feels like a permanent resident in your chest, whatever spiral of overthinking has you trapped in its dizzying loops, it is all, without exception, temporary. The Stoics, with their clear-eyed view of a universe in constant flux, would tell you that the only thing you can truly count on is change itself. The intense, all-consuming emotions that feel so solid and everlasting are, in reality, as fleeting as a cloud passing in front of the sun. Your task is not to stop the clouds from coming, but to learn to sit patiently through the temporary shade, trusting with unwavering certainty that the light of your core self remains constant and will soon shine through once more. Think about the most potent emotional pain you've experienced in your dating life from, say, 5 years ago. That devastating rejection that felt like it redefined your entire identity. That person you were convinced was the one who walked away. That period of loneliness that seemed like it would stretch on forever. Can you still feel the raw, sharp edge of that pain today? For most of us, the answer is no. The memory might be there, but the visceral, gut-wrenching intensity has faded. It has been softened and integrated into the broader tapestry of your life story, often becoming a chapter you recognize as essential for your growth rather than a wound that still bleeds. This is not a flaw in your ability to feel. It is a demonstration of a fundamental law of nature. Time is the great alchemist, and it is always working, even when you are in the depths of feeling that the current storm will never end. The Stoic practice is to consciously invite that future perspective into your present moment of suffering, to borrow the calmness of your future self and lend it to the part of you that is struggling right now. Let's apply this directly to the two most common catalysts for overthinking. First, the agonizing period after a date where your mind replays every single interaction on an endless loop. That joke that didn't land, that personal story you shared that now feels too vulnerable, the tone of their goodbye hug, it all feels monumentally significant in the hours immediately following the event. Your brain, in its hyper-vigilant state, is trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces, and it will gladly manufacture those pieces from your deepest insecurities. But this state is a chemical and neurological event as much as it is an emotional one. The adrenaline, the cortisol, the heightened neural activity, it has a lifespan. By consciously reminding yourself this too shall pass, you are not dismissing your feelings, you are placing them in their proper temporal context. You are acknowledging, right now my mind is in a state of high alert. This is uncomfortable, but it is temporary. The intensity of this analysis will subside. I will not feel this way tomorrow, or certainly by next week. This simple reminder acts as an anchor, preventing you from being swept out to sea by the temporary riptide of your own thoughts. Second, consider the sharp, piercing sting of rejection. In the immediate aftermath, it can feel like a personal annihilation. The ego is bruised, the heart feels wounded, and it's incredibly easy to construct a global narrative from this single data point. I am unlovable. I will always be rejected. There is something fundamentally wrong with me. This is the storm at its most violent, but the Stoic, holding fast to the principle of this too shall pass, does something radical. They accept the sadness without adopting the story. They can feel the grief of a lost opportunity while simultaneously holding the knowledge that this feeling is a visitor, not a permanent tenant. They understand that their virtuous core, their capacity for kindness, their integrity, their courage remains utterly untouched by another person's choice. The rejection is an external event, a piece of weather. Your character is the sturdy landscape upon which that weather occurs. The storm will pass and the landscape will remain unchanged in its essential nature, ready for whatever new season comes next. This final secret is perhaps the ultimate act of self-compassion within the Stoic framework. It gives you permission to feel everything without fearing that you will be consumed by it. When you are in the throes of dating anxiety, you can place a hand on your heart and offer yourself this gentle mantra. This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. This feeling is temporary. My true self is constant. This practice builds a profound and resilient trust in the process of life itself. You begin to navigate the ups and downs of dating not as a series of eternal victories or catastrophic defeats, but as a flowing river of experiences, each one destined to move on and make way for the next. You stop clinging so desperately to the good moments out of fear they will never return, and you stop resisting the difficult moments out of a belief they will never end. You learn to float with grace and trust on the current of constant change, knowing that whatever water you are in now, whether still or turbulent, is already on its way to becoming something new. And with that unwavering trust in the impermanence of all things, you find the one thing that is truly permanent, the quiet, unshakable peace that comes from knowing that you, at your core, are always enough and you are always moving forward. And so, we reach the end of our journey through these 25 Stoic secrets, a path that has taken us from the foundational dichotomy of control all the way to the liberating truth of impermanence. What we have explored together is far more than a simple list of tips. It is a complete philosophical operating system for the heart and mind. The ultimate goal of this practice, as you now understand, was never to build a cold, unfeeling wall around your emotions. Stoicism does not ask you to stop caring, to stop feeling the thrilling hope of a new connection, or the natural sadness of one that ends. Its purpose is infinitely more compassionate and empowering, to give you the tools to replace the chaotic, exhausting storm of anxious overthinking with the calm, steady power of purposeful, virtuous action and unshakable inner peace. You are learning to feel everything while being controlled by nothing. Think of the transformation that is now within your grasp. You can move from lying awake at night, decoding the hidden meaning of a punctuation mark in a text message, to sending a message with clarity and intention, then peacefully closing your phone and returning to the richness of your own life. You can shift from seeing a first date as a terrifying audition where your worth is on the line, to viewing it as a fascinating opportunity to practice courage, curiosity, and connection, regardless of the outcome. This is the real shift from being a passive reactor to the unpredictable dating world, to becoming an active, intentional creator of your own experience. Your peace is no longer a fragile gift that others can give or take away. It is a fortress you build from within, brick by virtuous brick. The prospect of integrating all 25 of these secrets at once can feel daunting, but that is not how lasting change is built. The Stoics themselves were not perfect. They were dedicated practitioners who saw philosophy as a daily discipline, not a one-time achievement. So here is my challenge to you. Do not feel you must master everything at once. Instead, as you move forward into your dating life this week, I want you to choose just one or two of these secrets that resonated most deeply with you and make them your personal practice. Perhaps it's the simple, life-altering act of mentally drawing the circle of control before you send a message or walk into a date. Maybe it's the courageous practice of negative visualization, imagining the worst-case scenario and realizing that you are strong enough to handle it, thereby draining your fears of their power. It could be the profound reframe of seeing every single interaction, especially the awkward or disappointing ones, as nothing but raw material for building your virtue. Choose one and for the next 7 days apply it with deliberate focus. Watch how this single, consistent practice begins to rewire your instincts and quiet the mental noise. This is where your journey truly begins. We have built this foundation together, but the real transformation happens out there in your life. I want to hear about it. In the comments below, tell me which one of these 25 Stoic secrets struck a chord with you. Was it the concept of amor fati, learning to love your fate no matter what? Or was it the practice of judging your impressions, learning to question the anxious stories your mind so readily invents? Sharing your choice not only solidifies your own commitment, but it creates a community of practice, a digital Stoic gym where we can all learn and grow together. If this exploration of practical ancient wisdom has brought you value, if you are ready to trade anxiety for action and overthinking for inner peace, then consider subscribing to this channel. This is just the beginning. We have so much more ground to cover, delving into how these timeless principles can revolutionize your career, your friendships, and your overall well-being. As we part ways for now, carry this one final truth with you. True magnetic confidence in dating does not come from a perfect profile picture, a clever pickup line, or a flawless performance. It radiates from the unshakable knowledge that your worth is an internal fact, not an external verdict. It comes from knowing that no matter what happens on the other side of the screen or the other side of the table, you possess the strength to act with integrity, the resilience to handle any outcome, and the quiet peace of a mind that is finally, blessedly, at home with itself. You are the rock. Now go live like one.